Good enough. All right, so good morning, everybody, and hope everybody's doing well on this slightly gloomy day. But spring has sprung, so hopefully everybody is doing well. I think what we'll start off with this morning is just our usual introductions. Just quick, if you could raise your hands, say your name, and just general how the virtual process is today for you, or if you're having any difficulties. So we'll start with Corey.
My name's Corey Agnew, and I'm actually really enjoying virtual meetings. I find them easier to connect.
Awesome. Awesome. I know, Corey, you had mentioned about everybody sort of seated back.
I've noticed it actually improved a lot at the previous meetings, actually, too. Like for council meetings and stuff also. I've noticed a huge difference in it.
Good. Okay, we'll go on to, I think everybody is familiar with Nadine, but so we'll move on to Dan.
Hello, Dan Andrus, and I'm good with virtual meetings. This is all we do now.
Awesome. Katie?
Yes, I feel the same way. I quite enjoy them. I had 3 yesterday, so.
Oh boy. Jen?
I like the virtual meetings. Obviously meeting in person would be nice too, but for my lifestyle, this works really, really well.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Councillor Ellen?
I'm happy to do Zoom as well, and that's like everyone else, that's all we're doing now. And this from us, our office is in our home, and other years getting to all of the meetings was really hard, but with Zoom, it's been very easy because I just shut the door and say I'm in a Zoom and leave me alone for time. So it's working out well.
Wonderful. Director Dunlop.
Troy Dunlop, Director of Public Works. I'm very much used to Zooms now. It seems like very much a part of our day, every day here at the town. I am old-fashioned and I do miss in person, but certainly the efforts we're all taking to be safe is more important right now. So we'll continue in this manner for sure.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Wonderful. Director Manhire.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we had a report that went to council the other day that we had done over 6,000 hours of Zoom meetings in the past year, and I feel like I've been on half of those at least anyway. But it's part of our reality, and but it's still great to be able to move business forward and meet with people virtually. And like Corey said, I figured out how to do backgrounds on my things so I don't have to show you that I'm sitting in the basement, doing my work.
Wonderful. Well, we'll try and keep this to an hour, so we'll only add 6,001 hours. Okay, so I guess we'll move on to Kevin, if he could introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Kevin McCormick. I live in Smith Falls.
All right. I think we're set to begin. So we've got you'll notice a couple of special guests with us today. So wonderful to have both of these gentlemen with us, and certainly a great opportunity to share our input on their respective projects. Really to support that development as it relates to accessibility issues. I will move on now to amendments to the agenda. Is there anything for anyone? Seeing nothing. So we'll move on to the disclosures of conflicts of interest. Is everybody clear on what that means?
Yes.
Yes. Right. I'm seeing none. So we now will move on to the adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting on February 24th, 2021. Hopefully everybody has a copy of those. So could I have someone make a motion to move that, please? Jen, thank you. And someone to second her, please. Corey, thank you. And that motion is carried. So now there's no delegations this morning to address. So we will move on to our correspondence items. First one being the accessible parking on Beckwith Street, phase 2. And there was a diagram that came with that. So hopefully everybody was able to access that, and if they could have that in front of them. And I will now call on Director Dunlop to address that issue. Director?
I'm just going to get Dave to share that picture for everybody.
Sure. So it's coming up there, Nadine?
Yeah, I've asked him to share it, so he should have it there. Okay. Oh, he's just had a system error with opening it, so he's just going to reopen it here and get it up for everybody. And we have Councillor McGuire joining, just so you know, Chair Bingley.
Awesome. Thank you. Good morning, Councillor. Just waiting on Director Dunlop to address the Beckwith Street parking issue. We're just having some technical glitches with the to pull up the diagram so he can begin.
Just message.
I can go ahead and start, Nadine, if you want.
Yeah, sorry, I don't.
No, that's fine.
Trying to get it open there.
So the purpose certainly of the meeting today is to start some real active engagement with the Accessibility Committee on Phase 2. I wanted to provide Phase 2, of course, of Beckwith Street. Just so that for the committee's awareness, there's been a lot of background work done by Morrison Hirschfield as the new engineering firm over the winter months. They did all kinds of geotechnical work, survey work, looked at past land uses and potential contamination that we might encounter in the ground, all kinds of advanced planning efforts. The schematic that's included in your agenda is a detail generally of, we'll call it the backbone of the street. So kind of the geometry or the frame for the picture, if I could put it that way. For which we would do all our design work around. That design that you do see represents a continuation of a lot of the accessible and barrier-free treatments that we had in Phase 1. So very much a continuation of that concept up the 3 blocks from Russell Street through to the Elmsley Street intersection. A couple of features, or certainly the accessible features in this Phase 2, are going to include the upgrades to the signals at Elmsley. We are going to be looking at that intersection for accessible upgrades, which would include, of course, your audible signals, your tactile treatments at the ramps, proper markings, countdown timers. So essentially exactly what you see in the lower 3 intersections that are now up and running with the new controllers. There's also a new pedestrian crossover device. And I'll say in the area of the intersection of Church Street. Some of these features may move or alter through the public consultation processes that follow, but we're kind of going out of the gate with the original details. So essentially at Church Street, there would be a push button activated crossing for pedestrians who want to get across the street around that location. And again, I think I'd mentioned this in the previous meeting, the design would be very similar to what you see in downtown Perth near their town hall. So it's activated by a pedestrian, has generally a shorter cycle than a typical traffic light, but generally the same amount of time for a pedestrian to cross. The second phase, again, would include barrier-free parking, and we don't want to confuse barrier-free with accessible. They're two different designations, but barrier-free parking designs would utilize that customized curb that we have along the street beside the parkings. When people get out, they don't have to step up over a barrier curb like they used to in the past. So we intend to continue with that barrier-free design. Our team is still going to push forward with a concept of supplying one designated or signed accessible parking space per block. So with the space we have, I presume that we would be looking at in total 6, perhaps, in the second phase. That'll be up for discussion. I should add that today in those 3 blocks, there's only one actual painted and signed accessible space or designated space, and it's in front of the town hall today. So we would be looking at increasing the level of service for that. So first off, I want to kind of point the committee's discussions towards the designated on-street parking. As many are aware, there was not an accessibility committee at the time the phase 1 discussions happened. So we created and assembled, a very effective consultation group or an accessibility working group to go through those designs. And I think that was takes us back to August of 2019. A key point of interest for the committee is that there are no essentially within the Ontario's accessibility or integrated accessibility regulation, there are no standards per se for on-street parking at the present time. So when the designs for accessible parking were done in phase 1, they looked at how to adopt or integrate from an on-site standard and apply it into an on-street situation. So what ended up happening in the first phase are the spaces that are actual painted and signed are a customized version that takes features from those integrated accessibility standards for on-site. And the dimensions of those spaces are 3.9 meters wide in terms of space that can be utilized and 7.5 meters long. So what that does is allows for typical accessible vans that have either side deploying ramps or rear deploying ramps to work. And that's neither feature was accommodated in the past in the downtown. So the design team again is looking at presenting a space of 1 per block. The key point of interest is we want those spaces to be readily accessible, so easily driven into, so there isn't a lot of driver maneuvering to access them or egress them. So you have seen them installed at the first stall to your right as you enter each block. Again, the yield in the second phase is 1 space. We'll be looking to increase that. The drawing I presented to the committee does not actually pre-identify any spaces. This is where we want to engage the committee to have a discussion about that. You will see on the plan what looks like ramps, not really ramps, but where essentially those little features you see at the start of every block would be where the rear deploying vans would offload essentially. So those have been added for discussion. So one of the items that we plan on leaving with the committee today, not looking for decisions on the spot, but we want you to start thinking about the designated parking locations and how we want to serve the town in the next phase. So that's kind of the extent of the discussions that we want on-street parking. I don't know if it's Chair Bingley, if you want to open this up to any questions maybe at this point before we move into the second.
Definitely.
Sure. Any questions?
Just having a little difficulty with my screen.
No, there we go.
Oh, there we go. Corey.
Will we be painting on the pavement where the accessibility spots are? Will there be like lines on the ground to prove where they are?
Director.
Yeah, through the chair, yeah, Corey, we will be putting the typical blue stencils on the spaces, and I believe we have one white line that will be at the front of each van space. So we have not added lines anywhere else. I know there's been discussions about that. A lot of that has to do with the considerations for the huge variety of lengths and vehicles using our downtown. And there seems to be a trend in the industry to move away painting those spaces so that we aren't designing to the largest standard and therefore consuming or reducing the yield of the parking in the downtown. Feedback's been pretty good from what I understand to date.
Anybody else? Kevin, do you have any questions?
No.
All right, we'll move on then. We'll call on Director Dunlop again, and he will address the decorative sidewalk, the stamped concrete, that issue.
Thank you.
There was documents associated with that, so.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's always challenges when you change project designers in midstream in a project, but we did that for a good reason. We had to make sure that we were getting value for our services. So we went out to tender for the engineering services for the second phase. And consequently, we again are working with Morrison Hirschfield. Again, a very highly regarded transportation firm in Ottawa. They're working with CSW Architects, who are the landscape subconsultant on the project. And CSW, as an example, did a lot of the design work on the Lansdowne redevelopment in Ottawa. So they've done their share of very high profile projects. So we've got a very talented team on the second phase. When they did the review of the crosswalk finishes, I should go back. So in terms of phase one, there was an intention to install concrete crosswalks at the intersections of Main Street and Russell Street. So essentially a distinction between the pavement and the crosswalk, so you'd have a different finish. The intention of the Parsons design was to do stamped concrete. Again, we went through extensive review of different treatments. The interlock in driving lanes, I should add, the interlock you see in those manual medians is not really driven over by every vehicle. Certainly a amount of vehicles will pass over them, but interlock does not perform well on driving lanes in high traffic scenarios. So in terms of advancing with interlock as a preferred solution, that was screened out. Parsons directed us towards a stamped concrete solution. And what that would be would be a poured concrete slab where the crosswalks would be. There would be white pavement markings bordering either side of that. The stamp treatment that was going to be selected for for those crosswalks in phase one was like a herringbone treatment, which is very much like an interlock on an angle. And the size and color of that stencil was going to be similar in what you see on the mountable medians. So it was going to blend in. Through the new engineering team's work, actually, let me go back. The reason those crosswalks weren't installed last fall was primarily because in Ottawa's experience, they've done these treatments many different ways. In some cases, they've poured these concrete crossings and paved up to them. The challenge when you do that is when the paver is packing the asphalt right up next to it, it'll damage it. It'll break the edges of the concrete. The other thing is, whether it's visible or not, every road that gets built settles to some degree in its first year. If it's built well, that settlement is nearly non-visible. The other consideration that was made was if those crossings were poured in concrete last fall, the curing period for that concrete was going to take us into cold weather, which was going to interfere with the performance of that concrete. So as many of you will recall, I think our paving wrapped up late October. And if you add 60 days onto that, I know concrete gets a lot of its strength in the first month, but if you add 60 days, you're into cold weather and that concrete was not going to be curing under optimal conditions. So in Ottawa's experience, when they do pour these crosswalk treatments, they tend to cut the sections of the street out, use the street as the framing, and you get the best, tightest finish between the road surface and the crosswalk. So that was the approach that we opted to go with. And our team has been very focused on ensuring that the quality of the work in the downtown is held to the highest standard. We didn't want to take shortcuts. We want to make sure that things perform and last as intended. So fast forward to now, Morrison Hirschfield's team and CSW Architects, who again, as architects, they have a lot of experience with concrete pedestrian treatments, whether it's in roadways, off roadways. They did some research, and the memo that was received is attached to the agenda. They have advised that they have concerns that the stamped concrete finish will have some unfavorable considerations for the elderly in terms of traction and also from an accessibility standpoint. We kind of felt it was important to kind of put a pause on that right now and circle back and have a focused discussion on that treatment to see if we want to make changes. As it stands, we are looking to work with Tomlinson to be pouring those crosswalks in May of this year. So probably after the half loads are all lifted on the roads around us, but that's the schedule. So I have provided the memo. We have been turning our attention. You do see some details on some graphics that are provided in that memorandum. CSW has committed to us to do more research to provide better samples of what could be done in terms of treatments that combine broom finish with perhaps a sandblasted finish. But needless to say, the move away from stamped concrete finish seems to be very significant. We're getting a lot of advice from Morrison Hirschfield that that's not where we should be going. So hence the discussion with the committee to review the kind of new findings of our new consultant and see if we should continue down this path. And, we've done so much positive work for accessibility in the first phase. I just don't want to see a misstep on our part and to put a feature in that we all perhaps feel, takes value away from the downtown as opposed to adding value to the downtown. So that's where we're at today. We do have some time, and it was important to get before the committee to get some early insight into that stamped concrete proposal. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Director Dunlop. Is there any questions or comments? Any thoughts?
Hi,
Yeah.
yeah, is there any examples that we can go see that are close by?
Great question, Dan. The best examples that we're kind of looking at, and I can send those links through Nadine. Some of them are visible on Google Street View. So Elgin Street does have some treatments. Now, Elgin Street to me is a little bit uninspiring. Like, it's good. The adding concrete crosswalks does provide textural change that does add aesthetics to key intersections. But the work that was done on Elgin Street, oddly, even on Google Street View, is starting to show some failures. So what they did was they poured broom finish crossings with a controlled saw cut fashion on them, but they framed those crosswalks with interlock. So interlock's not really throughout the crossing where people walk, but it borders it, and that interlock is breaking up already. And mind you, in Ottawa, they got buses running over, like Elgin Street bus route. So there's an example there. I have another example of Main Street in Ottawa as well. So what I can do is to send those examples back to the committee and for further review and consideration. So we want something that's going to be look good or appealing, add value, be safe, and be durable. We got to check all the boxes. And,
Great.
Anything, Jennifer?
I pulled it up on Google Maps here, and I can see what you mean about how there's a little bit of like wear already, even on Street View.
Yes.
But as to what is already on Beckwith Street, there is a lot of wear on the paint already, right? From like on the crosswalks.
Yeah. So great question. The crosswalks will have to be painted every year. One of the, sometimes our good intentions have other negative consequences. So one of the things the town is doing a lot less of is using a lot less salt. We've cut back our salt usage almost 300 tons than what we were using about 5 years ago. So about close to 30% reduction in use of salt. So we've moved towards sand with a treatment on it, with like a de-icer treatment on it. It's a lot less expensive. It's more, like I said, any de-icers are not the best for the environment, but the ones that we have selected are better than salt. And it's the kind of the lesser of two evils. But when it comes to the line painting, we have to refresh just about every crosswalk in town every year. And that's a spring activity. We already have our contractor gets lined up. That's why we get in a rush to get out and get the streets clean so that we can get at the front of their list when the temperatures allow. And we need overnight temperatures of about 5 degrees, holding at 5 degrees to start the painting. But I see what you mean, Jen. There's certainly a lot of wear in those crosswalks, and we gotta get that to stand back out.
Katie?
Troy, do you have a favorite suggestion?
No, actually, great question, Katie. I've kind of asked CSW to kind of expand on options with broom finished concrete that are going to hopefully inspire us. And I just said the details that are in their memo just don't do that right now. And they said they were going to put their full team's focus on that right now. So I will be following up with Morrison Hurstfield's team before the end of this week, but I wasn't really looking for a firm decision on anything right here, but I'd like you to take away the research that has been given to us as staff and see, should we be making a change? And then, collaboratively, we need to select that change together, both with the committee and with the broader community. So we're kind of trying to get at this early.
Thanks.
And I do think that it is, you'll see in the second paragraph, the first page where it talks, the heading is health and safety. I really liked that first point there, that it talks about how the broom finish would be sort of an ideal surface for pedestrians, and I think that really is what we're looking after. All other things are, you know, very important, but at the end of the day, I think it is a key priority to make sure that people with disabilities can use those streets well, whether they have a walker, a wheelchair, just on foot, cane, any device that would help them. That they, I certainly think the deep grooves of the stamped are not advisable, not a good thing. I think it's really easy if you have those, really easy to sort of, I don't know, I catch my toe all the time in, like, if there's a groove or a sort of a dent in any street, I would certainly catch. And I think that would be the experience for quite a few. Is there anyone, Corey?
I replied to you first.
Yeah, Lucy, if I could just expand, one of the unique considerations with stamped concrete is it gets a sealer applied to it.
Okay.
So it gets troweled and it gets a sealant put on it to keep essentially salts and chlorides out early, and that is part of giving it a more polished look, and I think it's the polished look that leads to these concerns in this application. So I should have elaborated on that, but that would be what would occur if we don't make a change. So.
Okay. All right, Corey.
So when you talk interlink, or whatever the word is that you said, are you talking about like the bricks that were on Beckwith Street at the corners of the Pizza and where the movie theater was?
Great question, Corey. So the stamped pattern of the concrete that was going to go in was going to mimic the pattern in the islands. I know when you get to the bulbs on the intersection, you'll see 3 different variations of bricks and colors, but in the islands, we have only one of those variations. So the intention, again, under the original design or the designs that we're questioning right now, would be a stamp that makes it look like a brick.
Yep.
Okay, I think we're good with that. Kevin, do you have any questions or comments?
I like the idea of the crosswalk at church.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, it's quite nice. Okay, so I think that wraps up that issue. If there's nothing, I'm not missing anyone. No. Okay, so we'll thank Director Dunlop for that input, and we will now move on to Director Manhire to address the Town Square Bandstand, and there's also documents associated with that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So we're in the design phase for a couple of different design phases for the Town Square piece. And for those of you that may not have seen it before, there's the Town Square. Dave, do you have that document you could put up? And I'm looking at the Town Square design, preliminary piece? Yeah. So here's the preliminary design that went to council for the town square, and it encompasses all of the campus of Town Hall. So the Town Hall, library, all the way over from Church Street, Beckwith, and Elmsley. And the idea is to create kind of an outdoor gathering space that can be used for multiple purposes. One of the cornerstones of the design is a bandstand that we're looking to put into the center of the park between the library and the town hall. And if you'll notice there that we're also looking at closing off that section of Daniel Street that goes behind the library currently, and making that into parkland. So we've been working with Director Dunlop around the design for Beckwith Street to incorporate that into it. Right now, this is a very preliminary piece. We brought it to council, got some feedback from them, and our landscape architect is working on incorporating some of the feedback from council into a design that will then go out for public consultation. So this is still very early in the development stage, but we thought it would be worthwhile making sure that you get a glimpse of kind of what we're thinking at this point. So this is kind of that one piece, and as I said, it's the early stages. Dave, do you have the updated one for the bandstand? I have it if you don't. Okay, so there's an updated one from this. So the idea was that they were looking for kind of a traditional bandstand octagon that could be used as a performance space, as a gathering spot in the center of that parkland, with benches around it so that people can watch shows and do that type of work. Dave, can I get the screen? I have a design that came back from council that would be worthwhile showing here. So let me just. Okay, so.
Are you able to share the screen?
That's what I'm trying to get to here. So there. Okay. So if you remember the design that was there, it had kind of a ramp going up on one side, and there were two entrances to the gazebo or to the bandstand, and it spread out. So we had some discussions around the height of the space and some of the features that we were looking at. We still wanted to have two entrance points. Council felt that one from that would be accessible would be okay, and then the set of stairs. So I had the second design people. This is Wildwood Designs out of Perth that's doing the design for the bandstand. And so they went back and incorporated that feedback into this design. So they have kind of the stairs going up on the one side, and then the opposite side had an opening, and the ramp would be wrapped around that. That ramp would then come down to an interlock surface around the bandstand, accentuated by these plantings around the base and around the ramp piece, and then surrounded again by plantings around the outside of that. So a very traditional design is what was preferred by council, and so that's what's reflected here. Dave, if I stop sharing, can you bring the just the overall piece back and the landscape piece? Thank you. So that goes here, and as you see, the landscaping around the bandstand, and then the there was some discussion around walkways and access into the park and into the space. And we've all seen where an architect or an engineer thinks people should be walking around a building, and we all seen where people actually want to walk. So you have an interlocking pathway that leads you to a space, and then you have the cow trail that where all the traffic goes. And so we're trying to capture some of those pieces in here. The thought is to use the same type of material as we have in the front of Town Hall with the Phase 2 renovation. And I'm not sure if people have seen that, but it's the same as the entrance off of Church Street as well. So the thought was to use that same treatment. We are working with Real around the DPAVE project, as well as some concepts around pollinator gardens and some of those other features that we'd like to incorporate into the space. The cultural plan includes components of artwork and display space in the park so that it can be used for those types of purposes. The idea of the back parking lot was actually designed to be a potential space for a farmer's market, and we've had things like the Pride Parade as an example. Marshall at the town hall. This would be creating a space that would allow that kind of activity to happen. So we could have everything from noontime concerts to just contemplative spaces in the park for people to relax and enjoy in our downtown core. So I think I'll kind of leave it there and maybe get some feedback if anybody has any thoughts on things that they see that might be that we might want to look at, or might be an issue, and suggestions on components that we might be able to add to the project.
All right, Corey.
2 comments. My first one is on the newest design that you just showed us, Art. The ramp, I don't think would be able to. Mobility scooters won't be able to make the turn into the gazebo. Like, it wouldn't be wide enough. It doesn't look like for a turn.
Right. So the idea was to build a landing at the back of that.
Okay.
That would. I can't remember what the exact specification is, but there is a specification around the turn radius. So that would be part of that. Sorry. My internet is unstable, apparently.
You were definitely unstable there.
There you go. So I don't know, I was unstable, but maybe my internet. So the idea is that there's a turn radius that has to be incorporated into that, and that we would build that into the landing at the top of that ramp. And then the ramps, of course, because it's an octagon, would be 22.5 degrees. So it would be wide enough to make that turn radius in that space.
And then my second comment is there a way that we can do a paved entrance there instead of grass? Because grass isn't very accessible for wheelchairs.
Sorry, Corey, where were you referring?
At the ramp, on the picture of the 4 of them,
yeah.
Right now it shows grass in front of the ramp, but if there's grass there during the spring and stuff, it won't be accessible.
No, it's all of the lead up to the ramps, as well as the access points from Elmsley, the parking lot for Town Hall, and Beckwith Street would all be accessible entry points. Like, we're looking at gateways and that type of thing, but it would be the interlock or whatever surface we kind of land on there. So it would be a hard surface, ideally a permeable surface. So we're looking at those kinds of options, but a permeable hard surface. And there are landscape components that we can use that are permeable but hard surface.
All right, Councillor Allen.
Yes, thank you, Director Manhire. The other question I had, and I never thought of this actually when we were discussing it as council, but what is the surface of that? Like it looks in the picture, it looks like, is it going to be smooth, a smooth surface, or is it going to be similar to what Director Dunlop said about poured concrete or that sort of thing? Or
Well,
have you
no,
given that any thought?
we haven't designed that, but we had talked about it. And hearing Director Dunlop's report earlier, it's probably not a bad idea for us to incorporate the same kind of finish in that space, because it will be at this point it's still going to be concrete. There was some talk about making that a wood floor type of finish, but we are trying to keep it as a hard surface, just from a user perspective. It would be easier for us to leave it that way. So we'll certainly coordinate with Director Dunlop in terms of what they settle on, what we settle on for the finish on that. You're talking about the bandstand itself?
Oh, the walkways, sorry.
The walkways. Okay. So it would be similar to what's on the front of Town Hall and the entrance to Town Hall from Church Street.
Katie.
Might be a silly question, but can you color cement? I love the look of the red.
You can. It's just a powder that you would pour on the concrete as it after it gets set in. So we are looking at that as an option as well from a finish point of view.
Yeah, it looks
it might
really
be
nice.
easier to maintain, and it kind of brings out the colors. And Katie, you were kind enough to get us the colors for the library. So I forwarded those to the architects to incorporate those colors into the finished features. So I'm sure we'll come back, the next iteration of the design will come back with some of those colors incorporated.
Great.
Wonderful. Now we're running on time, but I do want to wrap this meeting up in about 10 minutes time. So if we can all keep that in mind, that would be wonderful. Kevin, do you have any questions or comments that you'd like to?
No, I'm good.
You're good? Okay.
I have one, Lucy.
Awesome, Dan, go ahead.
Just a comment on lighting. Will the lighting be 24 hours or not 24 hours, but switched on by daylight? And will the lighting be throughout the park and also inside the pavilion?
Yes. So the pavilion itself will actually have lighting for performances, but also lighting for safety. It will be wired for sound as well, so that we can do performances out there. But the park itself, that's part of why we hired a landscape architect to incorporate the park safety design features that, and lighting is one of those things. So we would like to do that. We would like to have clear lines of sight from Beckwith as well as from Elmsley, so that there's no, dark spots in the park and access from all around.
Great, thank you.
Great question, Jen. Thanks.
Awesome. Anything else? Any other questions or comments? Or can we move on? Okay, we can move that on. So I'd like to thank both Director Dunlop and Director Manhire for being present today and sharing their insight on their respective issues. So thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
All right. We hope you will come back with further follow-up on those issues or more issues if that's the case as well. I think that concludes everything that we have to talk about at the present time today. So now we will move on to scheduling our next meeting. And just because of our two wonderful presentations today, there are a couple of outstanding issues that we want to get addressed fairly shortly. So we are looking at having another meeting about second, third week of April to keep going on that. So the two dates that I have are April 14th and April 21st. Is there any preferences?
Both work for me.
Both work? All right, Director.
I was going to say, if you could meet the 14th, we're on an accelerated schedule, and I'm certain we will have more information for the committee. And so if the committee can meet on the 14th, that would be ideal from our perspective. So.
Okay. So we can settle on the 14th then? That works for everyone? Kevin, does that work for you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Counselors, yep. And another thing that I'd like to talk about at the next meeting is the master plan household survey that was circulated in the mail, and just make sure everybody got that and fill it out if you can, please. There's also, you can call the town hall if you didn't get a copy, and they'll get one for you, and get that filled out. Is there anything, Director?
Madam Chair, thanks for bringing that up. You're talking about the Parks and Rec master plan. Is that that I would really appreciate any feedback that that the group or anybody else has to provide to that. We're trying to get as much feedback, obviously, as possible to incorporate into that plan, and we will be touching base with the consultants on Friday to see where we are with it. But there will be opportunity through Speak Up Smiths Falls as well. So if you keep your eyes open for that, we would very much appreciate any feedback. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGuire.
Chair Bingley, Director Dunlop, are all the mailings out now? If you haven't received it, you should be reaching out to the town, or how's that schedule going?
Sorry, which mailings?
Or sorry, Director Manhire. Looking at you, and he's got different faces here. Yeah, sorry, Director Manhire, is that handout out yet? I don't know. I don't think I've gotten one, but it seems like most people have. My parents have.
Yeah, all the residences should have received it, and if you haven't, you should receive it shortly. And if not, as Chair Bingley said, you can reach out to our department, and we will get you a hard copy as well.
Right, so if you're watching
or electronic copy,
and you're like me, you missed it.
If you haven't got it, please let us know, and we'll get you one.
Great.
Jen.
Is there a date that we should be looking for it by? I haven't received it either. So should I give it like another week, or just, send an email off and see if you guys could send
I would reach out. Tana Torch is the person that is coordinating the handout. So we are looking to try to get this feedback back to the consultants for April 6th. So if you have not received it at this point, I would suggest that you just reach out to Tana, and it's ttorch@smithsfalls.ca.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Kevin, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Excellent. So I think that concludes our meetings for today. So can I have someone make a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move.
All right, thank you, Katie. And could I have someone second her motion, please? Thank you, Corey. Have a great day, everybody. It was great to have you.